All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get some background information on the Tree of Life, which is going to be the the inspiration for our sketchbook unit this year. So let's start off. Trees have always been significant to human mythology and religion. Artists have depicted the sacred tree in many ways throughout many areas of the world. As you can see, even in cave paintings, you can see the ancient tree, the sacred tree, how they were using the hands to look like trees. Now, some of the religions, like Norse mythology, has used the tree as an image of something that kind of ties together the spiritual world and the physical world. So it connects one part of the cosmos, like the spiritual, their spiritual world up here is tied to the physical world by the tree called Yggdrasil. I'm sure I'm killing that. You can see that even modern artists use that when dealing with Norse mythology. Here's a scene from Thor, where there's Yggdrasil, the tree that connects the cosmos. Assyrian mythology also has images of the sacred tree. It's represented by a series of nodes and crisscrossing lines, like the branches of a tree would be. It's often seen with kings or mythical creatures kind of flanking it. They are not quite sure what the reason behind it is in Assyrian mythology, but it does show up frequently in their palaces. What is going on here? All right. The Celtic tree of life was called Cran Bethadet. I am terrible at these today. By the ancient Celts who believed it had magical powers. They honor the tree of life by leaving one big tree in the middle of their fields. Chopping down that tree was considered a serious crime, meaning if you were trying to insult someone or you were fighting someone when you were taking over land, you would cut down their sacred tree. The tree of good and evil is probably the one that we know the best these days. It shows up in Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. They all have versions of the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. In all of these stories, they are tempted to eat fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The story of man's fall from grace has been depicted by many of the faiths. You can see this is a Christian imagery and some Islamic imagery. And that leads us to our first ASI image, which were some Mexican folk art called the Abaros de la Vida, which were developed from the ceremonial candelabras or like where they held candle or incense burners, and they're made by crafters. The ones that were brought to Mexico by the friars were originally bronze and silver, and then clay replicas started to be made of them. They kind of grew from the years. I believe this is the oldest one, moving this away until this is the most recent one. Clay candelabra were also given to newlyweds to ensure them a good harvest, not only referring to children, but their livelihood in the farming community. So you'll notice that this is also based a little bit in the tree of life, or the tree of good and evil. There are usually images of Adam and Eve, and I think, these are some Madonnas. They have also images of flowers and animals. I think this, if I remember correctly, is Adam. So that they include the images from that tree of good and evil is where the images behind this come from. And now we're getting to our modern artist version. Her name is Jane LaFazio. She was a crafter and stitcher. She does a lot of quilt work now. She started a career in marketing as a graphic designer. She enjoyed art but didn't feel like she could draw until late in life she started taking some drawing classes. She works as a mixed media artist and a teacher. She did these 4 images, which we will be discussing in a few minutes, that you guys were looking at in your ASI, as honoring that Mexican folk art that we were just looking at. Now we're going to watch a short little clip of a video where she talks about a different one of her pieces, just so you get an idea of what her process is.
I would say that's my first, well, no, I can't say it's my first love in art. It's something I love to do equally to sewing. Well, this piece called Nature Journal is really all about my sketchbook. Each one of these individual flowers and images were first done in my sketchbook. And it's so great to be able to translate them into fabric. So I have stitched some flowers over paper. Some of these are transfers of images from my sketchbook. I usually do pen and watercolor in my sketchbook. Some are printed out, like I created a block print for them. And as usual, there's tons of hand stitching and some beads and some buttons. And it's really a cool way, I think, for me to take my paper sketchbook and interpret it to cloth.
All right, so you can see how her imagery kind of grows from sketches into kind of her quilt work. Just a couple of other modern artists that use the tree of life as inspiration. Gustav Klimt did a series of paintings that use the kind of pattern of tree branches. We're going to look at this a little bit more when we go out and look at the trees. Also, this kind of, what was her name? Natasha Westcott also does with similar imagery with those tree branches and the abstraction. So we are going to come back and look at these images a little later when we go outside to look at trees. So now we are going to pull out your ASI and we're going to discuss what we learned through those ASI presentations.